It's the classic story about a boy's first car, but with a creature feature twist. Welcome back to Recap Spot. Today we'll be going over the 2016 action comedy Monster Trucks. We open on a red truck traversing open road to a large fracking operation, where we are introduced to scientist Jim Dowd. A helicopter soon lands behind him, delivering Reese Tennyson, CEO of TerraVex Energy. Reese tells Jim that the success of his company depends on this drilling site, but they're soon informed of complications in the form of a large water pocket beneath the drilling rig that may contain a natural ecosystem. Jim orders them to continue drilling anyway.
Well, let's keep going.
When a strange creature appears on their video feed, they attempt to shut down the operation, but rising pressure causes the rig to explode, causing multiple creatures to erupt from beneath the surface.
You have to shut it down. Shut it down!
In the morning, Reese's henchman, Burke, informs him that they've caught one of the creatures, but two have escaped. Jim tells Reese that studying the captive animal may lead them to the other two. Meanwhile, a rich teen and his girlfriend go off-roading, while pretty boy Tripp watches wistfully from the school bus window. Tripp arrives at home, where he grouses his mother Cindy about wanting a car so he can get out of this nowhere town.
Something with 4 wheels that'll get me out of this place.
Her husband, Sheriff Rick, gets home, and it's quickly apparent that Tripp resents him because he misses his real dad. Tripp leaves for the junkyard, where his boss, Mr. Weathers, shows him a damaged truck recovered from the TerraVex explosion. Tripp decides to strip its engine so he can finish building his own truck. As he works on the engine later that night, he sees his father, Wade, on a news report about the TerraVex incident, and is surprised to learn that his dad is in town.
Dad?
Tripp soon hears strange noises outside and investigates to discover a junked vehicle with a large hole eaten through its side. The next day at school, his new biology tutor, Meredith, tries to introduce herself, but Tripp's friend Sam interrupts to show him a truck with a similar hole ripped through the gas tank. Just before Tripp leaves, Meredith arranges to meet him at the junkyard for a tutoring session that Friday. What are the odds that'll be the day we meet the creature?
This Friday.
That night, Tripp gets the engine running, but again hears noises outside and finds a strange tentacle monster hiding behind a stack of oil barrels. He tries to scare it off, but it attacks and chases him into the garage. Tripp hides beneath the floor, but the creature oozes in to feed on an oil barrel. Tripp quickly traps the creature and calls Rick, but the police find nothing when they arrive and think it's merely a prank.
I knew it as soon as I heard it was you on the call.
At school, Tripp asks Meredith how often new species are discovered, and she tells him that it actually happens quite often. That night, Tripp uses the creature's apparent appetite for oil to set a trap in the junkyard's pancake compactor. The creature falls for it, but Tripp decides not to crush it when a closer look reveals the creature to be cute and sickly. Tripp tries to approach the adorable monster, but he drops the controls and activates the compactor. He just barely manages to save it from being crushed, and it briefly seizes and threatens him before collapsing. Tripp nurses the now immobile creature with oil, and the two bond by vandalizing the TerraVex truck together. Meanwhile, Burke visits the sheriff's station and learns about the creature sighting at the junkyard.
I don't see why you're so worked up about a prank call.
Tripp loads the creature onto a pallet to show him to Rick, but the creature uses its new wheels to regain its mobility and retreat to the garage. Burke and his men show up and demand to see inside the garage, where Tripp notices the creature hiding in his truck. As Burke's men search the rest of the junkyard, Tripp wheels the truck out of their eyesight. Meredith shows up for Tripp's tutoring session and he tries to send her away, but the creature bellows and attracts Burke's attention. Tripp tells Meredith to get in the truck and asks the creature to help them escape.
Just go if you're gonna go.
Burke's men chase after, and Tripp attempts to drive, but the creature has complete control and takes them on a reckless joyride. When they finally lose Burke's men, Tripp introduces Meredith to his adorably terrifying new friend. She agrees to let Tripp hide the truck in her dad's garage for the night, where he uses her dad's tools to modify the truck and give him more control over the creature's movements. Later that night, the creature gazes in fascination at a monster truck rally on TV. Meanwhile, Jim tells Reese that they've discovered an entire underground ecosystem that may contain more creatures, and it's revealed that they now possess the other of the two that had escaped. Could they be any relation to Tripp's new friend? In the morning, Tripp reveals that he has now named the monster Creech.
You named him Creech?
He shows off his new truck modifications, and Meredith hops on her horse so they can go joyriding together. Tripp then further modifies the truck, while Meredith voices concerns that they're keeping Creech from his natural habitat. Tripp isn't entirely unsympathetic, but says that first he'd really like to visit his dad. On the way, they stop at a gas station to feed Creech, where the joyriding rich boy from earlier insults Tripp's truck before getting left in the dust. Creech starts driving erratically, and Meredith realizes that he must be hopped up on the added chemicals in the gasoline. Creech sideswipes a car on the road before totaling several at a dealership when he decides to play monster truck. Meanwhile, Jim experiments on his captives and learns about their appetite for natural fuels. Tripp and Meredith arrive at Wade's trailer park, and Wade admires his son's truck before inviting them to his trailer. After asking Wade about the drilling accident, Tripp and Meredith figure out that Burke is from Terravex, and that Terravex would have to shut down drilling if an endangered species were discovered at their site.
You guys stay here. I'll be right back. We'll have some wings.
Outside, Wade sells Tripp out to Burke, who angers Creech when he threatens to harm Tripp for hiding the creature. Creech intervenes, revealing himself to Burke's men in the process, but Tripp and Meredith escape by driving Creech through Wade's trailer. He passes Rick with Burke's men in pursuit, and Rick turns around to chase after them. Tripp leads them into town, where he loses Burke in a narrow alley before losing Rick when Creech uses his tentacles to suspend the truck overhead. Burke catches back up, but Creech escapes onto the rooftops. As they reach the end of a row of buildings, Tripp spots an oncoming train and decides to race for the tracks. Burke and Rick maintain hot pursuit, but Creech jumps the train and loses them. Rick berates Burke for potentially endangering Tripp's life in the chase, but Burke tells him that Terravex will cost him the next sheriff's election if he interferes. Tripp and Meredith, meanwhile, escape to her dad's lakeside cabin, where they learn that Creech is afraid of fire. Tripp expresses sadness over his dad's betrayal, but Meredith tries to reassure him that it's all okay if it turned Tripp into the man he is today.
Tripp, I'm sorry about your dad.
After she falls asleep, he hides in the truck to cry. When Creech drives the truck closer to the lake to go swimming, Tripp watches in awe and promises to get Creech back to his natural home. Jim, meanwhile, uses a Hasbro Simon game to show Reese that the creatures demonstrate hive intelligence. Reese tells Jim that it doesn't matter, because he intends to dump the creatures in a poisoned wastewater vent. As the creatures overhear his plan from their containment units, it's clear that their hive intelligence won't take long to come in handy. Tripp and Meredith wake in the morning to find Creech gone, but Tripp left his phone in the truck, so Meredith uses her phone to track it. They follow the trail to Terravex, where they find the empty truck and decide to search for Creech inside. They find the captive creatures just as Creech bursts through the wall.
What is that?
But Burke and his men arrive and shoot Creech with tranquilizers before taking Tripp and Meredith hostage. Reese deletes all the evidence from Meredith's phone and has them escorted out. On the way, Jim tells them that he's sick of playing evil and wants to help save the creatures. They decide to mod 2 more trucks and ask Mr. Weathers for help. That night, they repo the rich Joyrider's truck and bring it to a dealership owned by Sam's father, where he provides another truck and helps them work through the night on their modifications, while Jim keeps the creatures well fed. By sunrise, they're ready for the final showdown. The creatures are loaded onto a box truck for transport to the wastewater vent, but Jim steals the truck and brings it to the dealership. He warns Tripp that Burke is probably already on the way.
Nice shot.
As they release the creatures from captivity, Jim and Meredith quickly realize that the other 2 creatures are Creech's parents, prompting a cute hand-holding moment between Tripp and Meredith. Meanwhile, a worker tracks the box truck and informs Burke of its location. The 3 creatures are loaded into the modified trucks, and Jim and Meredith agree to drive the parents, while Tripp drives Creech. By the time Burke arrives at the dealership, they've already left.
They're on the move.
Burke's men find them crossing open flatland, and Rick gets a radio call informing him of the chase. After Meredith's creature takes out 2 of Burke's vehicles, Tripp decides to move the chase to rougher terrain. They try to gain ground by jumping a fallen tree, but Burke's men catch up to them on a narrow ridge. Creech narrowly avoids a crash by performing a tentacle-assisted stunt jump, but Burke knocks Creech onto the ridge and nearly sends Tripp plummeting to his death. Just then, Rick shows up and rams Burke's truck, giving Creech time to pull Tripp back inside. But Rick's engine stalls, and Burke rams him off the cliffside. As Tripp and Jim spot the poison tanker up ahead,
We gotta stop that tanker. They're gonna poison the nest.
Rick survives the crash and takes off on foot. The monster trucks nearly catch up to the tanker, but Burke orders his men to set a large fire, halting the creatures mid-pursuit. With the monsters trapped, Rick steals a massive construction vehicle and ostensibly murders most of Burke's men by totaling their vehicles while Burke escapes. He then lowers a ramp so that Tripp and friends can jump the side of the mountain, navigating a treacherous descent to arrive below unscathed. Tripp totals the tanker, but Meredith spots another one already at the pumps. Just as they near the wastewater vent, Burke rams Creech and overturns him. Meredith and Jim make it to the pumps, but find that the poison is already being pumped in. Creech rights himself, but Burke tries to ram him into the vent. Just as Creech teeters over the edge, he uses his tentacles to flip Burke's truck into the pumping mechanism, destroying it and halting the poison as he and Tripp plummet into the water below. Tripp nearly drowns, but Creech carries him to dry land as his parents recover the waterlogged truck. Tons of creatures then reveal themselves, and Tripp shares one last goodbye with Creech before the adorable monster oozes off to join his family. Later, Jim and Meredith plant endangered lizards at the Terravex drilling site to frame Reese and have him arrested without exposing the creature's existence. Tripp and Rick, now bonded, get his truck in proper working order, and we end as Tripp and Meredith embark on a scenic drive in his woefully monsterless truck.